Welcome back. This is Lab 2 of the Building File Servers in Windows 2000 MegaLab. In this lab, we're going to add fault tolerance to our file server by implementing Domain DFS, or Distributed File System. Now, DFS is a great feature of Windows 2000 that is often neglected in instructor-led classes and by unknowing administrators on their networks. What DFS is a mechanism to allow you to combine numerous shares together into one master share. Let me clarify a little bit before we get started with our lab here. Typically, when you create a share on different file servers, these shares are spread out amongst your entire network. Okay, so if you have a small network where you only have 2 file servers, it's not too difficult to find your shares. They can only be found on 2 different servers. But if you have a medium to larger size network, where say you have 20 different file servers and multiple different shares on each one of these file servers, finding your resources can be much more difficult. With Domain DFS, I can combine all these shares together and present them to the user from one location. So for example, I can create what's called a DFS root, make links to all the different file shares on each of the different servers, and the user can open up one folder and actually see all the different folders, shares that are out there in the network. They have no idea that they're on different servers. To them, it all seems that everything is just coming from the exact same place. And that's the beauty behind DFS. Simple for the user, and it's pretty simple for the administrator to install as well. Okay, in this lab, what we're going to do is we're going to be working on creating DFS roots and DFS root replicas, as well as DFS links and DFS link replicas. Before we get started, let's take a brief glance at the diagram for Lab 2. And this diagram is good here because it shows you the physical layout of the network. We've got our hub, Client 1, SRV1, and SRV11 are all plugged into the hub together. And it also shows you a logical representation of what's going on as well. SRV1 and SRV11 are both going to be configured as DFS file servers. Okay, and with Domain DFS, what we can do is replicate out our accounting shares back and forth across the network. So any file that's created on SRV1 will also be replicated over to SRV11. This is providing us maximum fault tolerance in case one of these shares or one of these servers actually goes down. Okay, let's go ahead and close this out here. And first thing we're going to do is kind of set up our environment. And to do that, we're going to have to go over to SRV1 and create a couple folders here and also files. So we're going to log on using terminal services once again. And I'm going to go to my C drive. And I'm going to just right click here, go to new, and just create a couple folders. Okay, the first one I'm going to create is going to be accounting, financial statements. Okay, the second folder I'll create will be accounting invoices. I'm going to create a couple files inside these. We have our just a plain old text file, so just go to new, new, go down to text document, and this one's going to be called May 2000 invoice. And I'll open up accounting invoices, and we're just going to create one called plain old 2000. Okay, so that'll be it for SRV1. Then we're going to disconnect, which will take us back to Client 1, and now we're going to terminal server out to SRV11. Got a couple folders we want to create there as well. Actually, just one here. Okay, and we'll put this one on our D drive since we already have that. We're going to put it right here. This is going to be, let's see, let's call it accounting budgets. And inside accounting budgets, I'm going to create one file. It's going to be a text file, and we're going to name this one Marketing Budget 2000. Got it. Okay, so what we've done so far, we're just creating fictitious folders and files. We need some information to actually work with. Okay, so this isn't a prerequisite of doing this, setting up DFS in a real-world environment. It's just kind of creating those files and folders so we can test how DFS actually works. Okay, now what we're going to do is create a DFS root. And to create a DFS root, what you need is a folder. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create a folder right now. And this folder we're going to create is going to be called accounting root. Okay, why accounting root? No good reason, just the name we chose to kind of go along with this lab. You can create a folder and name it anything you want. Okay, so if you had a public folder, you might call it public and have a bunch of different people connect to that same DFS root. In this particular example, the way we're doing it, we're going to set up a DFS root that's going to be configured really for our accounting users. So the premise here will be to give all of our users access to this accounting root, and this accounting root then is going to point out to the different DFS links or other shares in the network. Okay, and this will become more apparent as we go through this. Now, before we do anything else, we need to go back and share all of these folders. Okay, I probably should have done that when we created the folders, but all of these folders will need to be shared in order to use them as a DFS root in this case and a DFS link in this case. I'm going to go back here and share this folder, and we're also going to disconnect from here and connect back over to SRV1. Okay, if you're doing this at home and you don't have terminal services, you're simply going to be logging on to each one of these different machines. Okay, so there's really no difference. And I'm just going to share these as well. So I'm right-clicking on the folder, going to sharing, going to share this folder, accepting all the defaults. We don't need to worry about security or anything else right now. Click OK. Right-click, sharing, share this folder, OK. Okay, so we've got these shared. We're going to disconnect from here back to client 1, and now we're going to connect over to SRV 11 through terminal services, log on to SRV 11, and now we're going to open up DFS. This is done through the administrative tools program folder, and you click on distributed file system. Once we're here, we have to set up what's called a DFS root. And a DFS root, as I mentioned before, is kind of the starting point of this whole process. Okay, a DFS root is simply picking out a folder that's going to be the main share. Okay, so for example, we have to start our share from someplace. The DFS root is where it's going to start from. Underneath the DFS root is where our DFS links exist. And DFS links are the pointers to other file shares that are all across the network. Okay, and this will be more evident as we set this up. So to set this up, right-click, go to New DFS Root, and we go through the New DFS Root wizard. We're going to create a domain DFS root. Okay, there's several advantages to domain DFS over standalone. The main advantage is the storage within Active Directory of DFS, as well as fault tolerance. Okay, there's no fault tolerance built into standalone DFS, and there's also no automatic replication. Okay, so domain DFS is definitely the way you want to go. All the main key features of DFS that make it worthwhile are within domain DFS. Standalone DFS, this is what you'd have to run if you didn't have Active Directory. Okay, if you have Active Directory running on your system, then you can run domain DFS. Domain name. Okay, if we had other domains, we could specify another domain. We don't, so we're just going to specify Ben and Brady. What server do we want to host it on? This is our local server, SRV11. We could browse and connect over to SRV1. Now, if you select client 1 here and select OK, it's not going to work. Okay, it's not going to allow you to install DFS on a client machine. So we're going to leave the default, SRV11, and then now we get to the next area where we actually specify the DFS root share. A couple different options here. You can create a new share, and if you're doing it this way, you're basically able to specify a brand new folder. Okay, and I don't recommend this for a couple reasons. One, you should have planned this out ahead of time. If you don't have a folder already created and you don't know a name of one, you're probably not setting up your DFS root in the most efficient or effective manner. So I would create an existing share ahead of time like we have done. And second reason, it's just kind of confusing. Right now we'd have to specify an exact path where we want it to be. So it's much, much simpler to create the folder ahead of time, designate that as the folder we're going to be using for our root. Okay, so use an existing share. Okay, we look down here. These are all the shares that exist on SRV11. Okay, so we are going to select accounting root, click next, DFS root name. We can leave this the same, or we can give it some other name. This is pretty descriptive of what it's going to do, so I'm going to leave that. But I am going to add a comment. This is probably not necessary. It's basically stating what we already know. It's for the accounting department, but that's okay. Verify your settings, then click on Finish, and now you see that we have our DFS root. Now, one thing to notice here, look at how it's specified as far as how to locate this DFS root. It doesn't use a server name. Okay, this is your typical UNC convention here. Instead of it being / server name, like SRV11, it uses the domain name. And that's because the pointer to this DFS root is actually stored within Active Directory. So when you signify here benandbrady.com, it's actually looking in Active Directory for any available DFS server. And this is very important once we have multiple DFS roots, because if this server were to go down, okay, then nobody will be able to access any of the resources. Now, once we have second, third, fourth DFS root server, well, now Active Directory will be able to just reference out a different root server, and you'll still be able to connect to all the links that you're trying to connect to. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is just start setting up our DFS links. So if I right-click on the root, I get to New DFS Link. So I select this, and I can give it a name and also specify the folder. I like to browse first and actually find what I'm connecting to, and then name it based upon what I'm actually connecting to. So it doesn't really matter. You can do it either way. So first one we're going to go out and look for is on SRV1. Okay, on SRV1 we're going to be looking for accounting financial statements. We're going to use this share. And we're going to give it a name of just financial statements. Okay. Comment, you don't really need to put a comment in. If you'd like to, you can add a comment. Client's cash this referral for. Okay, this is going to control how long the client system has a pointer to this link. Okay, so this will save a little bit of time. If you constantly have to go back out to the DFS root to figure out where this link is located, it's going to take more time than it would be if you just had this information cached locally on the system. Okay, so if you raise this up, it's going to give you better performance. The flip side is if you make it too high, okay, if you make it much higher than 1800 seconds, then what's going to happen is you may be caching old information. Okay, if you make it lower, you're constantly going to have updated information, so it's very unlikely that you'll get misinformation, poor information. But the problem is then you're going to be using a lot more network bandwidth. Okay, so let's go ahead and click OK. Now you see our first DFS link. We're going to create another one for the accounting invoices folder. That's also on SRV1. Okay, so you just click through here, go find the actual share first. Remember, we shared this. The theory here is that this is going to actually have information or data inside it. So go find that information. Then here we're going to name it. You could just as easily give this the exact same name as the folder if you wanted to. If you feel like the folder is not that descriptive of a name, okay, you can name it anything you want. So we're going to name it Invoices. Click OK. And we're going to create 2 or 3 more here. Okay, this time we're going out to SRV11. So since we only have 2 servers, we can only access information off of 2 different servers in this particular example. But keep in mind, from a true DFS root, you can go out to as many different servers as you want and create links off of those servers. Okay, a couple more here. Why I keep going down there? Okay, SRV11. And we're going to just the accounting folder, which is inside public. Okay, so look what we did here. This is from before. We're actually opening up a folder that we had, and just this folder is really, pertaining to accounting. So we're not going to bother putting the whole public folder as part of their DFS root. We're just going to give them the information that they're going to want. So we grab accounting, going to give it a name. Okay, main accounting there. Click OK, and then we're going to add one more DFS link. Let's make sure I got the right one. Here we go. And this is going to be from SRV11 inside the public folder. This time we're going to get that general folder. So we're going to allow them to connect to general information right through this field as well. Forgot to give it a name, so that's why we're getting this error message here. So I'm just going to type in the exact same name, general, click OK, and we're all set. Go ahead and take a look at this right here and get a feel for how this looks. You've got your DFS root. Okay, so this is the main connection point where people will connect to. So in a second here, we're going to take a look, and you'll see that this accounting root is going to appear as a share, just like any of these other shares would. So now people can connect through this accounting root share and then see these folders. These different DFS links will be represented by folders to them. When they go through and click and open up a folder, okay, depending upon what server it's on, that information is going to be coming from whatever server that information's on. So it's not like this information is all copied over to wherever the DFS root exists. Sometimes people get a little bit confused by that. Okay, let's go ahead and exit out of here. And we're going to go back to client 1 here for a second. From client 1 now, we're going to look at DFS from the user's perspective. And once again, we're going to use the user account Jill Smith here. So we're going to log off here momentarily and log right back on. And then we're going to demonstrate browsing a network with DFS and without DFS. So we stop the video here real quick while I log off and log right back on. Okay, Jill Smith has logged on to client 1, and what we're going to look at now is what it would look like from the user's perspective. So she's sitting here at a Windows 2000 professional machine, and what she's going to do is browse for resources. So what I'm going to demonstrate to you is a couple different scenarios. First thing, we're going to browse for resources going through the traditional means. And if we were looking for different resources, we'd have to check in both SRV1 and SRV11. Okay, and here we see financial statements, invoices. Okay, these other 3 folders we didn't create, but you may or may not know information about those. So it gets kind of confusing. There's 5 different shares here. Then we go over to SRV11 and we see 4 more shares: accounting, budgets, accounting root, public, software. It gets confusing on which one to open up. Okay, now the goal is to bring this, which is the accounting root, bring that to the user. For example, you could train the users in a couple different ways. One, you could just have them browse to this actual root and tell them this is where they should be going. Because when they open this up, okay, this actually has links to all the different folders where they want to connect to. Okay, so here we see budgets, we see our financial statements, the general folder we created before, this main accounting folder that's on that public share we created, and notice we can access all of these. Look how this looks. These are just like normal folders, even though this folder here and this folder here is on SRV11 and this folder here is on SRV1. There's really no difference, and you can't distinguish between the two. Okay, so look how this is. When you create a share, it's still going to put that share on the network, so those still exist. But when you create that DFS root and then create links within it, you're pointing to these shares and you're organizing all of them, or any that you want to be, inside this accounting root. Okay, and that's our goal here, okay, to accomplish this by using that. Now the next thing we're going to look at, let's go ahead and close this. Let's try and connect using a UNC, Universal Naming Convention. So we're going to start run, and we're going to type in the Universal Naming Convention for that DFS root. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we're going to look at it. One way of connecting would be this way. / the name of the server, okay, SRV11, and the name of the actual share itself. Okay, and that DFS root is accounting root. So we're going to type out accounting root. Hit OK, and it opens that up directly. So now I have these 5 folders directly accessible to me without having to browse the network. May not be very impressive on a small setup like this, but if you can imagine, let's say 20 servers, and you've got 10 or 15 different shares on each one of those servers, well, now you're bringing all that information to you in one consolidated location. So huge advantage. Another way of browsing for those resources would be, instead of using the computer name, to actually use the domain name. Okay, so now we'll be using Ben and Brady. Okay, Ben and Brady, the domain name. This is important when we get to our next topic on DFS root replicas. Okay, because when you type in SRV11, you're trying to directly connect to that one particular server. When you type in Ben and Brady, now you're specifying you want to go to the domain, and when you specify the DFS root, now you're going to be connected to any server that has a root replica for that particular domain DFS. we'll demonstrate this here in a second, but here's another way we should be able to connect to this root replica. Let's see, or this root. It's not a replica yet. Okay, yeah, no problem. It opens it up, exact same place. There's no difference as far as the information that we're seeing. Okay, next thing we want to talk about are DFS root replicas. Now, DFS is an excellent tool, but the problem with it is if we only have it on one system, what happens if a server goes down? Okay, so you've trained your users now, and this kind of stays here. So every day they just, they open this up and they click OK, and it opens it all up here, and all their folders are right there. So it's a good thing for them. But what happens if SRV11 goes down? Okay, because even though all these other shares may be existent, okay, they might be, for example, the financial statements folder exists on SRV1. Well, these users will try to get through it through this pointer, and the pointer is no longer there. So the starting point, the root, is no longer there if that server goes down. So in that situation, that would make everything inaccessible to them. Okay, now, they can still get to it if they know how to. If you've trained them how to browse through the network, okay, or if you meet with them individually, you could show them how to do that. This isn't a big deal on a smaller network. But we like to think of things in a little bit larger, larger terms on a larger scale. And even if you have 200 or 300 users, it's still considered a fairly small network. And it's almost impossible to get around to all those users and retrain them in the course of a day if a server fails. Okay, so you're going to have some downtime, you're going to have some annoyed people, they're going to have a real difficult time connecting to the resources. Which leads to our next topic, and that's the DFS root replicas. Okay, what we want to do is have at least 2 DFS root replicas. And think of it like this. Instead of just having one starting point, okay, so if we had one DFS root replica up here, we could put another DFS root replica on the other side, and what it will allow us to do is if one goes down, that's fine. Active Directory is just going to refer you out to the other side. Okay, so no big deal. Our goal is ultimately just to get to, these folders that we see here. I don't care who points me in that direction. Let's go set these up, and you can get a better idea of what we're talking about. I'm going to connect over to SRV11 once again. Oops, let's see here. Administrator. Okay, we're going to open up, where am I going here? DFS. Okay, so we see DFS here. Looks just like it did before. We have our DFS root. We have our links. To create a root replica, what I need to do is right-click, okay, up here on top. So you see this is highlighted. I right-click, New Root Replica. Okay, New Root Replica. Careful, don't remove display or delete DFS root. I've accidentally clicked in that before when I've been in a hurry. Okay, so we're creating a new root replica. And it's different than what you see here. Okay, new replica. This is going to be a link replica. We're going to cover that here in a little bit. We're creating root replicas right now. Okay, we're replicating this root. Okay, so we're going to go out, and don't forget we cannot specify the exact same server because it already has one root on it. We can't use it again. Client 1 is a Windows 2000 Pro machine. It's not going to work either. Only Windows 2000 servers will support DFS. So SRV1, even though these other 2 are showing up, is really our only choice that'll work. So I choose SRV1, I click Next, and now I need to pick out a folder on SRV1 that's going to be used as the root replica. Okay, and we didn't create one especially for that. So what we're going to do here, we're going to go against my advice that I mentioned before, and just to show you how this would work, we're going to go ahead and create a new share on SRV1. Okay, so this is literally going to create a folder through this tool. Okay, and we're going to create it right on the C drive, and we're going to call it Backup DFS Root. Okay, share name. This will allow us to specify, this is the path, that's going to be the actual name of the folder. This will allow us to give the folder an actual share name of what people refer to it as when they connect to it. So we're going to call it Backup Root. And we'll click Finish. Okay, it's asking us right here, it's saying this folder does not exist. Do you want to create it right now? Yes. Okay, and if we want to in a second, we can go over to SRV1 and verify that that folder exists. But I think we would have run into problems, getting an error message if something was wrong. Okay, so now we see that we have 2 different root replicas over here. Okay, so here's the root. These are the root replicas. So this is indicating, we've got one. This is the actual name of the folder that people will connect to, accounting root. These are the two different folder names, though, that make up that are going to be a starting point. So now what will happen is when somebody refers to this UNC name here, benandbrady.com/accounting root, they're going to be referred alternately out to either one of these locations. Okay, so it's going to help us out as far as a little bit of load balancing, and we also have that fault tolerance now built into this as well. Okay, and that's what you see here. Okay, another thing you can check is to verify that both of these are up. So you can check status. We get a little checkbox here telling us they are indeed working. Check status again. It's a good thing to use if you're not sure whether or not one of them is working or not. Okay, so we've got the root replica set up. Let's go ahead and disconnect here and go back over to client 1. Okay, we're actually still logged on, I believe, as Jill Smith. So we don't need to log off. We can do our testing straight from here. So what we're going to do is just go out here and check. Let's see if we can connect out to same thing we used before. //Ben-and-Brady/accounting root. Okay. Should come to no surprise that we're able to connect, because now we even have 2 DFS servers. What you need to remember, please don't forget, this is referring through Active Directory. So we're starting an Active Directory first, then we're going and saying, hey, we're looking for this accounting root, DFS root here. Can you help us out? And Active Directory can refer us out to either one of these 2 servers, SRV1 or SRV11. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to simulate failure on SRV11. What I want to show you is what the ramifications are if one of the DFS roots actually goes down. So I'm going to stop the video here for a second and unplug the cable from SRV11. Okay, so to simulate server failure, we're really doing nothing more than just disconnecting the network cable to prevent it from being accessed. Okay, so I'm going to stop, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've logged back on now with Jill Smith's account, and we're going to go back and do the exact same test that we did before here. We're going to try to connect to the benandbrady.com, or I'm sorry, Ben and Brady domain and the accounting root. So when I click OK, you'll see now that it pops right back up, and SRV11 is not plugged in. One thing I will warn you, after you've set this up initially, I want you to take a close look, and if it's not working properly, try rebooting both your systems. Servers are of utmost importance. Sometimes DFS root replica doesn't work correctly until the servers are rebooted. So I will give you that fair warning ahead of time. Okay, now the next thing. We've connected now. Okay, so we got out here, but what happens when we try and open up, let's say, the budgets folder? Okay, right away I get this error message that budgets is not accessible. And the reason for this is because remember where this folder ultimately exists. It was located on SRV11. So there's no way I'm getting out to this folder, in the present condition. If I try opening up financial statements, no problem. That folder exists on SRV1 and we didn't unplug the cable for that. Okay, so if we take a look here, now what we're going to do is back up here one step. I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to stop the video momentarily here, plug the cable back in, and make sure that we can connect to that budgets folder right away again. Okay, so I plugged it back in. We're going to access our DFS root once again here by using the domain name. Come back out. I'm going to try connecting to budgets now. Okay, no problem. So we're reconnected. SRV11 is basically back up and running. Okay, but that leads, I guess, to our next problem. And that is, hey, well, what if a server does go down and I need access to these files? And that's the next piece that we're going to look at. That's what's called DFS link replicas. So what we're going to do, I'm going to stop the video, log off, log back on as the administrator, and we're going to get started with that. Okay, we're back, logged on as the administrator here, sitting on client 1. And the next part we're going to go into is setting up the environment for our DFS link replicas. And before we get started, let's differentiate to make sure that you're somewhat clear on the difference between DFS root replicas and DFS link replicas. DFS root replicas are only replicating that very beginning point, the starting point of the whole DFS root structure. There's no data that's actually being replicated. Okay, so it's just the folder structure, how to get to a particular location. Active Directory then can refer it down to one of those 2 DFS root replicas, and both of those root replicas replicate back and forth the existing link structure, how to get to the different shares in the network. DFS link replicas are totally different. DFS link replicas now are taking a DFS link, so some share that's sitting out there. For example, we created a public/accounting share. So all the information that's in accounting, we may want to replicate that information to another location on another server. So now if one of those servers goes down, all that information has been replicated over to another server, and we can still access the file information. Okay, so the beauty of this is that we can always access information no matter what happens. If one server goes down, we should still be able to access all this information. Okay, so before we get started, let's go ahead and set up our environment. So we're going to first terminal service over to SRV1. Okay, log on here. And we're going to create several folders and share them. And these folders do not have to take on the names that we're using. Okay, we're just using this for simplicity, I think, here, so we can match up which folder goes with which other folder. And we're going to create folders that correspond with the original folders. So for example, we've got a budgets folder. Well, its DFS link replica name is going to be backup budgets. Okay, then we've got our main folder. We're going to create a backup for our main. We've got a general folder. Okay, and we need to share each one of these. So we'll go right back in here, save ourselves the effort of having to come back here and share them later like we did last time. Okay, so step number one, in a real world environment, you're not necessarily going to be going through this quickly and just creating these folders, but you would want to come up with an alternative location to back this stuff up. So we've got budgets, we've got a folder that exists on SRV11. We want a backup location, a fault tolerant location. So what's going to happen is information is going to be backed up from SRV11 to this location here. Okay, and we messed up this name here. Let me change that. And the nice thing about it too, it's not just a master-slave type relationship. This DFS replication actually goes back and forth, where if I change something, even though this is called backup, don't be misled by that. These two, it's multi-master replication, so they're replicating back and forth to each other. Neither one has precedence over the other one is what I'm trying to tell you. If I copy a file here into this backup budgets folder, it's going to be replicated over to the main budgets folder as well. Okay, so we're done here, so we can disconnect down to SRV, our client 1 here, and now we're going to connect over to SRV11. Okay, and at SRV11 we're going to be responsible for a couple more folders. So we're going to go out to our D data partition and create some DFS link replicas for the links on the SRV1 server. Okay, so we have backup financial statements, and then backup invoices. We'll share both of these. Refresh to get them nice and organized, and we're all set. Okay, now we can open up our DFS tool. So this is just simply creating your folder structure. Take the time to make sure that they're set up correctly. You've got them all shared. Save you a lot of headaches down the road. So I'm going to open up DFS. Okay, and now within DFS, see we have our root replicas, but we don't have any link replicas. This is just the one link that exists right now. So what we're going to do here on budgets is we'll just right click, go to new replica, and now we have the ability to specify where this replica exists. Okay, so we're going to browse out for this. And this, of course, is all transparent to the user. They have no idea, where the folder is, whether or not there's 2, 3, 4 replicas. You can do anything you want with this. The user simply just sees a folder that opens up for them. Okay, so that's the nice thing about all this. Okay, and we're going to go to the backup budgets folder. Click OK. And for replication policy, we want automatic replication. Manual replication would indicate that you'd have to copy the information back and forth. Okay, and if you have more than one, it's really a pain. So you definitely want to choose automatic replication here. Once you choose OK, it pops open this window. And you see right now that replication is not enabled yet. Okay, to do this, highlight this like it already is, click on Enable. Okay, and you see that now it's going to replicate. And then our second one down here, you need to make sure you specify both. So I'm going to click on this shared folder as well. Click enable, and now you see that we have two different folders, two different links that are set up for replication. Now I'm going to expand this out here a little bit. And this is important just initially, but we need to set whichever one's going to be the primary or master. I don't know why they use two terms here. It means the same thing, trying to accomplish the same thing. And what this is going to control is what information is copied from where to where initially. So for example, the accounting budgets folder actually existed before the backup budgets folder did. So there's probably already information in the accounting budgets folder. If I choose for this then to be the master or the primary, now this one's going to copy information to backup budgets. If I left this as the primary, well, there's nothing in this folder. We just created it. Nobody, no users put information in it. It's going to make this the primary, and it's going to erase all the information in here. So it's literally going to take away this information because this is the primary folder. Okay. Now after this initial replication, okay, when both of them have the exact same information, from that point forward they turn into multi-master replication partners, meaning it doesn't really matter where the information is stored, it's going to be replicated back and forth, regardless. Okay, so it's just this initial time when we replicate. So we want to go down here and select set master, and we click OK. And just take a second here, and then we'll be off and running. Okay. So now you see we have two replicas here. If we want to check these to make sure that they're working okay, we can check the status. Check the status again. Or we can even check the status over here, which is kind of verifying for both of these replicas. Okay, we're going to go through for each of these different ones and set up these replicas real quick here. So for financial statements, we're going to browse. We have to be a little bit creative here because I don't remember which one's on which. Okay, so the backup is actually going to exist on SRV 11. So we have backup financial statements, automatic replication. Okay, we have to enable. Now make sure you're paying attention to the primary once again. Okay, we've made a point of indicating which one's the backup. So this is the main one, this is the correct one indicated as primary. So we can click OK, and that one's now working. Okay. For general, we need a replica. And the general folder, I believe, is on SRV 11, so our replica should be on SRV 1. Backup general, automatic, enable, and this is going to be the one here that should be primary. So we change that, click OK. So after you've learned this, it's pretty straightforward as far as how to set this up. It's not really that difficult. Okay, so who are we looking for here? Invoices. Okay, backup. Oops, wrong one. Bear with me 1 second here and we'll get this taken care of. Backup invoices, automatic replication, enable, and the primary is correct. And our last one here, main accounting. Okay, main accounting. Oops, wrong one. Okay, backup main, okay, automatic. Okay, so just so you can see right here, this is the primary, so we need to change that to make sure information is replicated from here to here. So we rushed through those last steps just because they're very similar to the first two that we did. We can go through here and check the status on each of these to make sure that they're all working correctly. If they were not, we probably would have already been notified since we just started this process. So everything looks good. We'll check our DFS root. Okay, green check marks everywhere. So everything appears to be working just fine. Okay, so we're going to close this out, and then we're going to disconnect back to client 1 and go test this out. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video momentarily here, and I'm going to log on then again as Jill Smith, and we're going to test out our DFS links. Okay, we're logged back on here as Jill Smith, and what we want to do is test out our DFS root replicas as well as our DFS link replicas now and make sure that we have complete fault tolerance. So first thing we want to do before we disconnect, let's go make sure that it works all together. Okay, so we can access our DFS root, test out a couple links here, make sure we can access those as well. Okay, we can. Now we're going to delete this file. And we're going to create a new one just to mess around a little bit with our DFS links and throw it a little bit of a test. Okay, so we created a new file here. Now we're going to close this, and I'm going to stop the video here for a second and take SRV11 offline. I'll be right back. Okay, I unplugged the cable on SRV11, so right now we should not be able to access SRV11. If I were to, let's see, terminal service over to it right now, let's see what happens. Okay, we see that it's not connecting right away, indicating that it's been unplugged. So I'm going to cancel this, we don't have to wait any longer. And now what we're going to do is try to access our DFS root. Okay, Bin and Brady accounting root. We see that this opens right up, so we are getting our DFS root replica. That's working. Let's test out now our link replicas. And recall before that the budgets folder actually exists on SRV11, and we couldn't access it before we open it up. So we're going to attempt to open it up right now. Okay, and it opens right up, and look at the file we actually have. We have the new text marketing file. Okay, and this, recall, was the one that we just deleted, that marketing budget 2000 file, and created a brand new text marketing file. So this has actually been replicated over to SRV1. Why do I know that? Because this is the only file server that's up right now. Remember, SRV11 is offline, so there's no way we could be seeing this from SRV11. Okay, what we're going to do here, I'm going to delete this file. And now I'm going to just close this out. And we're going to bring SRV11 back online. So I'm going to stop the video here for a second once again. Okay, the cable's plugged back in, so SRV11 is back online. And what we'll test now is what's actually happening here. So we're going to open up the budgets folder, and we see that it's completely replicated. It is gone. So what this is showing, when we brought SRV11 back online, it actually replicated the changes back from the replication partner that was existing. So we do have multi-master replication going on. Also understand that while the SRV11 was down, it's not like we couldn't modify this file. And keep in mind, this file was originally created on SRV11. So you have complete access to any file on either replication partner when one goes down, and that's pretty key to DFS. Okay, that wraps up Lab 2. Hope this lab was informative for you. We'll see you back here real soon for Lab 3.